Hello and welcome to the Limitless Outdoors Podcast, brought to you by Eberlestock. This week we are going to be debuting the legendary Shane Foutch, and he has been one of the most pivotal people in my life over the last close to 10 years now, 10 years that we've known each other, and he is the one that turned me on to goose hunting. Like one of the most exciting things that I ever do that you guys don't see much video about, but he turned me on to goose hunting, and the coolest thing he ever turned me on to was bear hunting. And when you talk about bear hunting, I think there's a lot of different images. There's guys that run bears with dogs. There's guys that bait them in. There's hunting them on grassy logging roads and in clear cuts. But then there's a style of bear hunting that Shane introduced me to, and we kind of jokingly call it the poor man's sheep hunt, because like the bear that you killed last year, Shane, was above the sheep. So we're going to be today just kind of talking about spring bear and specifically our style, but really want to introduce you to Shane a little bit and get some backstory on when he started bear hunting. So when's the first bear hunt that you remember?
Well, when I was really small, our neighbor shot a bear out of his apple tree in the middle of the night and gave it to us. And so I was probably like 4 years old, standing there in the dark with my dad with a flashlight looking at this thing. And that was my first impressive moment with a dead bear.
Okay.
And then another 6 or 7 years go by, and then I'm coming of age, and I want us to hunt bears again. So we started hunting. My dad hunting and me just following him around, but that was all I wanted to do anyway, because I didn't want the responsibility of trying to shoot one of these things myself.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be there. And I've told you this story numerous times, and you told me that it was like the pivotal moment of my hunting career. We'd been hunting spring bears in the clear cuts and logging roads style, just walking around and around here and there, and it was raining, just wet, miserable, cold spring day, and we made this big loop, and we were there. I thought we were done, and we come back onto the road that would lead us back like a half mile back to pickup. And so I was thinking we were done. And nope, my dad turns and starts walking the opposite direction back up the road again. And we go up in there like another half a mile or so, not that far. And there is a bear in this old landing, in the green grass is like a foot deep. And there he is, just standing there in the rain, just munching away like a black Angus. There. And my dad shot him. And there he lay in the green grass. And that was a real start there.
Okay.
There, and then I have twisted that philosophy around of just never quitting.
So Colton, what is it like following Shane around in the woods?
Well, that story just explained a lot of Shane's methods and how he hunts. I mean, Adam's followed him around more, but a little bit that I've gotten to do with Shane. It's we start going one direction, and then all of a sudden we're going downhill when we're trying to go uphill, and then we're going side hill when we're trying to go back the drainage, and all over the place. Like we're climbing up the mountain, and all of a sudden we're at the bottom of the mountain. I mean, Adam had that experience with him mule deer hunting. He was at the top and at the bottom 5 different times on the same hunt. So that entire story about your dad getting to the road and turning around and walking back up it explains a lot.
It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
It does.
Also, we lovingly call Shane the raccoon.
Yeah.
Because he finds all the most random stuff. I mean, up in Alaska a couple of years ago, we found all that old abandoned stuff in the middle of a brush patch because you and Adam were poking around, and you're always turning up different things. But what happened So you have that story with your dad. You're watching bears get shot up to this point. What was your first bear?
My first bear was a couple years after that. I took my dad's old 30-30, went back in behind the house, and it was kind of a swampy creek bottom back there in the rain again there, and I blundered onto this bear out in this little bitty meadow along that creek and somehow shot it to death.
So what, growing up, I remember you telling me a story that you guys didn't have much money one year, or probably most of the time.
Yeah.
And your dad bought a brand new pair of boots. This is sometime back in that time frame. And then he gave you one boot and he kept one boot for himself. So you guys each had a new boot for hunting season.
Yeah, we had better traction. We had good traction on one foot and not the other one. And you could get around pretty good that way.
Okay. Did the other boot have holes in it? Or was it still in decent shape?
It was decent. It was a traction issue.
Okay. So what was the shift that made you go from hunting bears in the swamp to hunting bears in the cliffy, nasty high country?
That was a long and slow procedure. After a while there, I started hunting in the high country in my late teens, and I started falling in love with the alpine avalanche pass country.
Okay.
There, and then I realized that there was bears there.
So is there a difference between low country bears and high country bears, you think?
Yeah, there might be. There's probably a higher percentage of big bears in the low country.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, in that high country, super rocky stuff, you get a lot of mediocre younger bears that are run out of the good stuff. But you get some good bears in there because actually my first solid mature boar was shot in the high country.
Okay.
And I've been hunting around right at timberline, and I knew there was bears running around in there, and I was coming back around again just before dark, and I'd already been through there once before in the day. And just before dark, I'm coming along, and there's big bear out on the edge of the elder, just munching grass. And I sat down on my butt, probably 50 yards away, and there shot him right in the ribs with my old 300 H&H.
Okay.
There, and he just leaped down into a bunch of regen spruce and died.
So do you think that's a huge aspect of your hunting, coming back around to the same place multiple times?
Yeah, because once I get it in my mind there's something there, if I don't see it the first time around, doesn't mean it's not. You're not going to get it again. Okay. You just keep working the same area over and over and over.
Because that's a huge, like for me anyway, once I've worked an area, I have a tendency to move past it. But then like you have those experiences where you've been watching something forever, and then after a couple of hours, all of a sudden something pops up that had been there the entire time. Yeah. And they could be taking a nap or whatever. And we always kind of joke about it, but you really personalize animals, or what's the word for them? I guess maybe humanize them. Personify. Well, yeah, like
give them character.
Because you're one of the best trackers you are the best tracker, hands down, that I've ever personally been around. I don't know, there could be better guys out there, but like when you're looking at tracks, you're like, oh, this one came over here, and oh, look, here's a social media post it made here with all these, because where all the animals come together, there'll be rubs and there'll be all these tracks in the dirt and everything, and you'll just walk around and see who's who and what's going where, and you really personify those animals as you're tracking them. You realize they're their behavior and what they're actually thinking. Because they're more than just like, I think sometimes when we think about hunting, a lot of people think that animals are just these personalityless creatures that just wander around like zombies. What is your thought on that?
No, and like I don't do a lot of tracking bears. I look for bear tracks and bear sign, and then I figure them out after that. But like tracking mule deer, especially, and elk, I'll start tracking something, and within a little ways, I know who it is and what its personality is, and I can figure out if I can catch it or not.
Okay.
And then and you'll see me, Adam, and my son Salvador has probably seen this lots of times. All of a sudden, we'll pick up a fresh rack, and I'll take after it, and everybody says, "Okay, we're gonna get it. All gonna be good." And half hour so goes by. Oh, we're never gonna catch it. I don't want it, and I climb back up the top of the mountain again.
Yeah, that happened to us one day in particular this year.
What's that like from your perspective watching that? Because that was new for me when Shane started doing all this, the personality, like how they have an actual personality.
Yeah, well, on the tracking something and then turning around and going back up the mountain in that aspect, at first it was a little bit frustrating because, I don't know. I'm following him around and I don't know what he's thinking.
Yeah.
He doesn't think like anybody else. So you're like, well, he's done this before, so maybe he knows something I don't know. And so in one day in particular this year, we got on a buck track and we were following it, and we hadn't hunted there maybe one other day, and didn't know the country very well, so we figured, we'll follow this buck and he'll probably lead us to some other deer. So he goes around side hill, and then all of a sudden he gets to a spot and there's no other deer tracks, but the buck just starts going down the hill, and we're like, okay, he knows that there's some other deer down there. Well, we go down, 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 down. We're almost back down to the road we started on, and I don't remember if we jumped them or what. Well, Shane all of a sudden decides, I don't want this deer anyway. So we literally, we turn around and we're like, well, we got to get back up to that good mule deer elevation. Well, we go back up the hill, and like 2 more times during the day, we end up dropping all the way back down and back up, back down and back up. Ended up almost at the top, and we're following this buck and a doe, and we had jumped them twice, and it's probably an hour and a half, 2 hours before dark, and I'm just like, what the heck are we doing? We should have left this thing a long time ago. But he turns around and says, I'm just trying to teach them a lesson and everybody watching a lesson that on like what he can do, or he won't give up or something. Like, oh my gosh. But it's like that all the time hunting with Shane.
So with personality, so you're noticing that there's differences in these animals, just even by their tracks and their mannerisms by their tracks, right? But then, okay, so I think probably the best demonstration of this, like in real time that people could watch, is the 5 grizzly bears run at hunters. When it comes to personalities, like the joke is that Shane's like prophetic when he's watching animals, because he'll tell you what, like, just because as you're watching them, you kind of gain a lot of understanding just by their mannerisms and what they're doing, and then also your experience with kind of how some of them behave, like what's going to happen. And so I want to walk through that story a little bit. So you guys are up in one of your favorite bear hunting spots, and it's just loaded with huckleberries.
Yep.
And you get up on this hillside, and all of a sudden you're looking down, and oh my goodness, there's a grizzly bear.
Yep.
And then there's another grizzly bear, and then all told, you end up seeing 5 grizzly bears in this little patch.
Yeah.
And you're like commentating the whole thing. Like, we have it on video. You're commentating what is going to happen because of their personalities and like who they were. So what happened in that situation? Like, what was the deal?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I wanted to leave as soon as we saw the second one. I was like, well, there's probably no black bears here. Let's just get out of here while we can. But he wanted to sit and watch it like National Geographic. So
yeah,
which can't die if you're not sitting there.
Yeah, in hindsight, I'm glad we did, because it was an awesome experience. But
so what happened? You're watching these bears. Like, what's going through your head? What's happening that's giving you indication that it's going sideways?
Well, we were seeing them, and we watched them for a while, and then we back off a whole lot further. and then we're still watching them, and I'm just having a great time watching them. And I've named them all. They're names of our family members. They acted like different family members, and so it was easy to name them that.
Okay.
They made it easier to keep track of them
Yeah.
if they had a name. They're in their personal personality. So we got the big one there, who's a bully, and then there's a medium-sized boar.
What were their names?
Okay, the medium-sized boar was there, Salvador, my son.
Okay.
And then my younger brother, the Kyle, he was a big boar. And now the Kyle always has bullied and chased Salvador his whole life.
Oh, okay.
So
the big boar's Kyle.
yep.
Okay.
And so Kyle's coming along, and Salvador's munching huckleberries, and Kyle's getting closer and closer and closer, and then up above him is a sow and the two cubs, which we named Dea and the kids. And so,
Which is Salvador's wife and kids.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they're up there munching along, and then you see Dea looking down the hill, and sees Salvador down there, and you can tell she knows him
Oh, okay.
in there and doesn't really care.
Yeah.
And then Kyle's getting closer and closer, and I can just see this whole thing is gonna just fall to pieces here. And I had to tell not Kyle, but Adam, that Kyle's gonna start there chasing Salvador, and they're gonna run up in this. Dea and the kids are gonna run right up the ridge, right on top of us.
Okay. How would that ever happen?
And so they're going along, all is well with the world, until all of a sudden Kyle realizes that Salvador is right ahead of him eating huckleberries, and he takes after him in there. And Salvador looks, oh my God, there comes Kyle. And so he takes off running and runs right into Dea and the two cubs, and then he runs the opposite direction, kind of, and then the instant that Kyle sees Dea and the two kids, he takes after them.
Okay.
And then here they come, right up the ridge, as fast as they can go.
This is not okay. So hold on though. This is not a made-up story. You can watch this video, and it is literally foretold by Shane that this is going to happen, and it plays out exactly how he says it's going to happen, all based on their personality.
Yeah.
Crazy. So then they come running up the ridge. What happened then? I heard lots of screaming like girls.
Yeah. Lots of screaming there, and they will not listen to me. There are lots of profanity, but they won't listen. They just keep right on coming. And so then we run over here to the next ridge right beside us. They're little skinny finger ridges in the top of a burn.
Okay.
And so we run over there, and here comes Dea and the kids, right beside us. And when she's right beside us, she finally sees us, and oh my goodness, here she comes.
Okay. Did she deviate towards you when she saw you?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
how'd that- oh, okay.
yeah.
Full on charge.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I dropped the
Okay.
camera.
I actually didn't know this part of the story.
I dropped the camera and pulled my rifle up because she got, I don't know, like 40 feet or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like right on to, I mean, she was close.
Yeah, he just made a 90-degree turn as soon as she saw us.
Okay. Because
And
that
here
part's
she
not
came.
really on video because the video
No,
camera
yeah.
goes down at that time.
Yeah, because Adam.
So I think people
Dropped
are
it.
a little. I was a little confused as to exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she ran up right beside us, and then she seen us, made the 90-degree turn, and charged.
Okay.
And then, but she only came like halfway and realized that if she took the time to kill us, Kyle would catch her cubs.
Oh, okay.
So she turned back and ran on up the hill with kind of that look. I will come back and get you later.
Okay. So here's a good question then. So we hunt in grizzly country all the time, and people they email me, call me, or they run and talk to me, and they're like, "How worried should I be about grizzly bears if I'm hunting out in Wyoming?" Because there's stories in the last couple of years. It's gotten actually pretty consistent where guys are getting mauled and killed. There was that outfitter in Wyoming. There's been a handful of guys in Montana, like that. I think she was a teacher that got drug out of her tent and eaten by that grizzly bear. So there's been question. I have all of you answer it individually, but Adam, I guess we could start with like how much do you think about grizzly bears when you're hunting around, and like do they put you on edge? Are you comfortable around them?
So to be honest, up until a couple years before I met Shane, I had my first grizzly encounter here at home, and we hunted here forever, and we've had grizzlies here, but I was never worried about them until just started having more sightings and more run-ins with them. And I wouldn't say I've had like any horrible encounters. I mean, been charged a couple times, but I've never been even close to being mauled or anything. So, but yeah, it's one of those things hunting here and then some other places we hunt, there are grizzlies. Yeah, it's always in the back of my head now. And there is a level of worry, and like when you're camped out or just laying our sleeping bags out on the ground in a huckleberry patch or wherever we're out. Like, I mean, there's always that.
Wrapping yourself up in moose hide.
Yeah, whatever. But yeah, I'd say for sure for me, it's something I'm always thinking about if I know I'm in grizzly country.
Okay. Does it prevent you from going in there, or are you just kind of conscious of it then?
It doesn't prevent me. I will say that I don't think the chance of me going out and hunting by myself, say in archery season or something, is way down now. Like I don't feel comfortable just going out especially here in these mountains, and just going and calling elk by myself. There's a level of security when you have at least just one person with you, and I feel like with the amount of grizzly activity
because it's a hot spot, right? Where
it's a super hot spot.
The areas you guys have been in, you've had a number of these interesting run-ins. But so for me, the deal is I don't mind hunting. Like I've never been deterred about the daytime. You're hunting bears and everything, and or even archery elk hunting or whatever. But it's those nights that we spend when we just throw our sleeping bags out on the ground and the grizzlies are all around, like there's just something comforting about two people. Mm-hmm. From my standpoint,
can only maul one person at a time.
Well, that's my point. So how I set up to sleep every night is I put myself in the position where I'm really confident that if a bear grabbed a hold of one of you, I could kill the bear, but I'm not sure if a bear grabbed a hold of me, if one of you would kill the bear. So I always put myself in a position where I think the other person is going to get grabbed first. That way we have the best chance.
That explains a lot.
Does that make sense? I don't know if I've ever told you guys that, but
it makes sense. Yeah.
That's been my running theory.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but how about you, Colton? Like when it comes to grizzly bears, what are your considerations on them?
I think sidearm is necessary. I mean, some people swear by bear spray, but I'd rather have a lethal deterrent for either myself or the bear if the bears really messed me up pretty good. So, but no, I had an encounter years ago in Bonners hunting, and I didn't have a sidearm with me. It got dark. My headlamps died. All I had was my bow, and I was working up a bull, and bear came in on me, and it wasn't comforting, especially hiking out for 3 miles in the dark. So that wasn't good, covered in blood and all that fun stuff. But yeah, no, I agree with Adam. I think having two people, and the way we hunt anyways, it's the way we are. We have one person videoing, one person actually actively hunting. But
I talk to a lot of people though that they just refuse to, like they're just like, I would love to go elk hunting, but because of the grizzly bears, I'm not going to go. What would you say to somebody like that? Maybe that's a better way of asking this question.
Be conscious, not conscious. Be conscious of bears. One thing that we are constantly talking about and we've thought a lot about is up in Alaska. I mean, one just hits you while you're pounding through the brush, you can't hear it, then you're most likely going down. So just, I don't know. I'd say if you're hunting grizzly country, have a second person. I wouldn't let it deter you. Just be aware and plan ahead. Try not to sleep next to your meat. I know a lot of guys, they try and put up bear fences and everything else, and the fact is that a bear's most likely going to get through it. So if they really want something, they're going to get through a bear fence. So
Yeah.
just be smart a little bit and be prepared. Have good rounds on you that can actually handle a bear. I know a lot of guys walk out in the woods with 9mm, and the fact is, it's just not doing too much against a grizzly. That's the fact of the matter.
Shane is a 9mm man.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on bears,
Shane
Shane?
used to be a 10mm man.
Shane's the expert when it comes to bears.
Not really.
Yeah, kind of though.
I have a really healthy respect for grizzly bears.
Yeah.
Very much so. I don't let it get in the way of what I want to do but I respect them really highly I'm a pretty big fan of bear spray because I've got sprayed myself by it.
Yeah, that stuff is gnarly.
I will never carry it again. If you haven't seen the video.
Oh yeah, well, on your guys' was that the mule deer hunt that you showed that on, or was that
The elk
elk
hunt
hunt.
this
elk hunt.
season? Yeah, I packed it.
You shot yourself in the leg with bear spray.
I did.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'll
Chemical burns for the next 2 months.
Yeah, and I done the same thing. And I lost my leg, it felt like. So I can just imagine they're getting shot in the face with that thing.
Yeah,
It would be so drastic.
because you pretty much carry bear spray all the time anymore.
Yeah. And I would rather not have to shoot one.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge mess if you do
Yeah.
shooting a bear, and especially like up in Alaska and stuff. So this last year when we went back to Colton's bull and that brown bear, this is where the personality thing really started to play in, though. That I learned from Shane with these animals is instead of looking at them as just these zombies or whatever, every one of them is unique. And they say, it's like 90% of communication is nonverbal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all based in body language. And that kind of goes across the board with animals too. And that's what you've taught me over the years. And so when we got in on that bear that was on Colton's moose, we got into like 35, 40 yards on him, and we sat there and just kind of talked to him for probably 5 or 10 minutes and just we all kind of looked at each other, and you could kind of get a feel for, he wasn't a real aggressive. He wasn't an aggressive bear. He was like a middle 35-year-old male. Like if he was a man,
Yeah.
he would have been like in his 30s.
Yeah.
He's in great shape, and he understood the situation. And he even walked. What's cool about that footage, if you watch it, is he's on, when we first get on him, he's on the gut pile, and then he walks over to the quarters. And like the feeling I got from him was he walked over there and he was like, okay, these are yours. And then he walks back over to his gut pile and he's like, but this is mine. And he starts covering it back up. Yeah. And then he walked off and let us come in and get it. And as soon as we got all the meat, he came right back in. But that was the kind of experience with the personality, because there's bears that aren't like that too. There's bears that are super aggressive.
I definitely agree with that end of it, is how you communicate with them. I mean, you just have to make sure that there's no threat to them. There's a black bear, it's not a grizzly, but I had a black bear sow come in with 2 cubs years ago when I was guiding. I was laying on the ground. She popped out at like 10 feet right above me, and I jumped up, and she at first she started to charge, and I kind of like moved towards her a little bit, and then I backed up some, and it was just like, hey, get your cubs and leave, because the cubs went up the tree. So I backed out a bit, and she came, got the cubs, and they headed out. So it's how you approach a situation. If they think that you're a threat to them and their cubs in particular, they're going to do something crazy.
So what's your recommendation then dealing with grizzly bears overall? Do you have one?
Do I have one? I would, like I said, I'm a fan of bear spray. There is a easy personal deterrent, and you can use it very, very liberally, whether you need to or not.
Yeah.
And it's a good learning experience for you and the bear. I would, if you run in a lot of grizzly sign and you know that they're working at you, it would probably be a good idea to kind of stay out of that spot if you really don't want trouble.
Yeah. And minimize your...
Yeah.
Because, so would you like during the fall when most of these people are worried about running into the bears, where the bears aren't, it's not like they're just roving all over necessarily, right? You kind of find them in concentrated areas like that.
Yeah.
That's the reason those 5 bears were there. So what kind of areas would you, if you were really nervous about grizzly bears, so if somebody's listening and they're really nervous about running into grizzly bears, what kind of areas would you stay away from?
They are good berry areas because there's always lots of berries and good berries.
Okay.
That's a main thing. But they are kind of on, and grizzlies especially, they are just randomly roaming around in the woods.
Yeah.
That's where you're gonna just randomly meet one in some unexpected location.
Yeah.
So always be paying attention.
Those are typically the problem ones too, is when you just
Yep.
bump into each other. It's not like if
Yeah.
you can see them and watch them and understand them, it's different. But when you have no idea that they're there and then you just bump into them, they have no idea that you're there either.
Yeah.
That's when the
Well, a lot
whole
of the big
things blow up.
grizzly bears. So I was talking to the bear biologist locally in Bonners Ferry, so northern Idaho, and it was a crazy. They had like double or triple the bear problem, the grizzly bear specifically problems that they've normally had on any given year this last year.
Yep.
We're good friends with Josh Stanley, who's the regional director of Fish and Game, so he's kind of in on that. And then I met this new bear biologist, and what's happened is these grizzly bears are coming down into the low country now, and they're really hammering on like goats and sheep and stuff like that down there. So they ended up euthanizing a couple of these grizzly bears because once they come down, they're opportunists in that sense, right? They come down and they've got an easy meal, and they, black bears are always getting into people's trash, and now some of these grizzly bears, as their numbers increase, because kind of back to the whole Kyle and Salvador bear situation, right? Kyle ran Salvador off, so as more bears are out there, their territories are pretty big, and they'll run other bears out of their territory. So some of these younger boars, and that's what's been killing a lot of these livestock down in lower elevations and getting into kind of problems and like chicken coops, stuff like that, are these younger boars that are getting run out by the Kyles of the world.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, I think so. What, when it comes to running into these bears, what is have you ever had anything real serious with a grizzly bear?
Well, in August, I'm on this walkabout in the mountains there with nothing but a jar of peanut butter and a raincoat.
Okay. Because you like misery, just for everybody listening that doesn't understand Shane. He just loves to be miserable.
And I get into good huckleberry. I meet this black bear. I look at him, and I don't go very far at all. And there's a sow grizzly and they're one cub. And so, stupid me, I'm standing looking at her, and I decided to do a calf elk call.
Okay.
I'm like, here, and there, man, her head pops around, and here she comes right up the hill.
Okay.
And then I'm starting to think, well, this is a bad idea. And so I start yelling at her, and then she finally hears me. And then she just stops down there, and she's like 60, 70 yards away. And then I'm standing there with a 9mm in one hand, a can of bear spray in the other, and I'm there.
You look like one of those cool action movie guys.
And there, I'm like talking to her and telling her, oh, this is a terrible idea to come up here. It's just going to end badly for everybody involved. You come up here. And she stands there and she thinks about that for a while. And then she finally makes a 90-degree turn and walks off to the side.
Yeah.
And then me and Adam were bear hunting one time. And late in the evening, we were up in this avalanche pass, and there's a little bit of these avalanches that came down, and there's big piles of snow, and you could see the bears have been sliding down these strips.
Do they do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They love sliding in the snow.
Grizzly bears in particular.
Yeah. It's kind of a strange thing, huh?
We see all these bear slides, and we're thinking, man, this is cool. There's got to be bears here. And wait till it gets dark. No bears. So then we just lay down and go to sleep. And we get up in the morning and we're standing there with drinking our coffee, and I'm looking way up the hill. Oh, there they are. There's a sow grizzly with a cub.
Nice.
And they're coming down. They are
Not a cub. A cub.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's not a bear. This is a bear.
Yeah.
It's pretty much full grown.
Yeah, he looked like the size of a Volkswagen bus, and then the cub was like a smart car.
Okay. That makes sense.
And they're coming down the hill, and they're having just a great time. The sow is just running and jumping like a horse for the front end with their head just swinging from side to side. And they are coming down that hill, and they're coming down hard. And then they disappear in the elder, and I'm like, my God, they are going to pop out right on top of it. And then and a few minutes later, they pop out like 100 yards above us, and they're still just coming. And we just start yelling and cursing at them, and they finally realize it. There, and then they turn and run off.
Crazy. So what? Maybe we can move on from the grizzly bears, because I didn't even plan on talking about grizzly bears, but that's a great topic anyway.
Yeah, I love grizzly bears.
So fast forward, I grew up. My first bear I shot was in some swampy ground, like you're talking about. I was walking along, it's grassy, swampy, and I shot it to death like 15 times with a .223. It was an unexpected hunt. And when you're young and you're hunting, it's overwhelming, and it gets done, but you just don't even know. Kind of black out, and stuff ends up dead. But so then I killed lots of bears, but I was an opportunist, so I wasn't necessarily hunting them. Like sometimes I'd kill them in the spring, sometimes I'd kill them in the fall, but I can't remember very many times that I really went out and I was like, okay, today I'm going to go and I'm going to find bears and I'm going to kill a bear. They just kind of were a byproduct of the rest of my hunting. In the spring more so, I would go out looking for them, but just because I had nothing better to do. So then I meet you, and you're really heavy into bear hunting. You have a real love for bears, not just because there's a difference, and I think that's important to note with you, is like, you're not the kind of guy that just likes killing stuff. You have been a meat hunter through and through since you were a kid, and you have a tremendous amount of respect for the animals. And so, like, hunting them is an interesting thing, hunting with you, because, like, I don't know, there's a proper level of respect, so you're not out there just for blood with them. But I started hunting with you with these bears, and all of a sudden my eyes were open to this totally different world of bear hunting. Because when you watch bear hunting on TV or whatever, most of these guys and a lot of people that we know, they're putting the bait barrels out and they're waiting in a tree stand for a bear to come in and they shoot it, or they're finding them in these grassy patches. But no, you have this other idea of hunting bears in the nastiest country I've ever seen. So how did that kind of come about?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the years go by, and I shoot a fair amount of bears, and then I work for years, and I get married, and I come back around to hunting a lot again. And I didn't actually need a bear, and so I like and I have a real love affair for the high mountains.
Yeah.
And so then I started just purposely hunting bears in the prettiest places that I could come up with.
Okay, because one thing that you said to me right when we first started hunting together was you hunt the location just as much as you hunt the animal.
Yeah.
You're looking for that location.
Yep. I started hunting locations that I really liked. And I've come to realize in the spring, you can find bears high in the mountains, really high, up in just the extremely jagged, rugged the cliffs, and there's bears in there, and they are so hard to get to. You can glass them sometimes, and there's like no way to get there.
Yeah,
it's just like they're sheep or goat hunting, the same type of situation.
Well, so like you guys, I remember we kind of renamed different things, but you guys were up on Rhino Peak, right? Looking across on that rocky face. hunting those bears. And you're just like, you couldn't even hardly put your tent up anywhere up there. It was so rocky.
Oh my goodness, it was, yeah.
And then you couldn't even get to the bears once you spotted them.
No, we sat there watching 9 bears
And there was
above the sheep and above the goats.
Yeah. There was a bunch of goats on a little ledge, and this bear comes along, and he is peering over the ledge onto these goats. And thinking there, he'd like to get down there, but he don't know how to even get down there himself.
Okay. So you learned that these bears are in the high country. How old were you when that epiphany happened?
I was in my 30s when I started hunting bears like sheep.
Okay.
And just hunting the country and the rugged mountains just for the love of it. And I became a real purist, and I wouldn't hardly shoot nothing else.
Okay.
If a bear was close to a road or in a clear cut, I wouldn't even go after it. Because I did not want to waste my bear tag and not get the full experience.
Okay. Yeah, because you historically, like we've had the opportunity to travel to some amazing spots to hunt, but you've got a real love affair going on with your mountains here.
Right here,
at home. And even though there's pretty low, like compared to some of the numbers that we see in other places, even though there's low density, like I know that your soul just wants to be up there in that nasty stuff.
Yeah, even if it's not that great.
Yeah.
And even if the quality of bears isn't as good as you could maybe come up with here, but every now and then, I have shot some really nice bears in really rough country.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you turn up some really nice stuff in some of this country. You're not seeing hundreds of them, but the ones you do see end up generally being pretty good. Not just bears, but deer, elk, everything across the board.
Yeah.
So then we, obviously a lot of people have watched quite a few of our hunts. We started hunting in some real nasty after you turned me onto it, and all of us onto it, because all of us had hunted bears before, but I think
I have the same story as you.
Yeah,
I never really was a bear. Well, I really wouldn't even go out bear hunting that often.
Yeah.
It was like, if I needed something to do, I'd go out, but I didn't kill very many, and then met you guys. I was like, oh, it was actually kind of fun.
Well, and then Colton, you were a guide for quite a few years down kind of central Idaho.
Yeah, a lot of baiting. We'd run dogs for some bears, but I liked actually going and doing the spot and stock stuff, so I was down in Riggins, so I was starting to hunt Hell's Canyon a bit and took some guys in there and got a little bit of introduction into the nastiness that bears actually live in. But not until I came back from guiding in Colorado did we actually start doing what Shane does and get into the really nasty stuff and hunt hard. So,
yeah. And I think when I started getting into it, because what you're talking about just being in that country, like there is almost nothing better for me than sitting there in the cliffs and you're just sitting there picking everything apart and you're way up there. You look down and it's just this nasty rocky stuff. And like when we were hunting your bear this last spring and we got there and the rams were all bedded up down below and then your bear comes out. And I mean, you see in that video, because we called that video Above the Sheep, you see in that video when he shoots that bear, I mean, it's just basically, it doesn't look as steep as it really is in there. Like he falls off a cliff basically down in there. It took us forever to work our way around in there, but that is some of the most beautiful vistas ever up in that country. And just like even right now, just talking about it makes my soul hurt because we're only a couple weeks away from sitting in some of that country.
And you got the roaring there creeks, and you got the warm sunshine and the green grass, and then in these here blizzard squalls that come in, and then you got deep snow you're working up in there. It's just such in the high country is really noisy there in the spring because of all the rushing water, and then boulders coming off the cliffs and the high mountains rolling and crashing down the sides of houses around you. It's just I just love the experience of it. Nice. There in all the new life coming to be in there. I just use bear hunting as a reason to get out there and see all that. Yeah. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it if if you didn't actually have something you were doing.
So here's a question for you. You don't look it, but you're going to be 49 this year.
Yeah.
Crazy. So you're 48 right now. June 10th, right?
Yep.
Is your birthday? You'll be 49. So how rough is this country? Because I've taken guys hunting before that have watched our videos and are friends of ours, and they're like, oh, yeah, I want to really go and do that. And they go up into that country and they end up not being able to go. They get like the first day into it and their feet get tore up or their body just can't make it, and they end up not going on the hunt. They go back down to the bottom.
Yeah.
So how rough is that country that you're hunting?
It's pretty rough.
That's
They
it.
are.
Well, like, what about like the dry, the term that you always use that I've never heard anybody else talk about is dry mouth fear. How often do we have dry mouth fear from the?
Oh god.
What causes dry mouth fear for you?
I don't really like heights. When I'm walking along on a ledge that's like 6 inches wide with 1,000 feet high near straight below me down to the creek, that causes dry mouth tear.
Dry mouth terror. That's what you call it.
And you always end up in some situation like this.
Yeah,
Always.
loose footing,
Yeah.
gravel, shale, whatever. it is
There and
underneath
there's
us.
and there's nothing under you.
Yeah.
When you look down and there is nothing under you to catch you, and it just rounds off into nothingness.
Yeah, you're just going to tumble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's always horrifying. Like the feeling I get. So every time we shoot a bear and then it just goes tumbling, I just feel like I just want to cling onto the hillside after we shoot it. Because you realize, like, that bear, when it fell, it just started going and it ain't stopping.
Yeah.
Like the same would happen to you if you were
Yeah.
to slip even once in some of the country we're hunting.
Yeah, you just start cartwheeling down a hill. Yeah.
Oh, what a sport.
And then it gets dark on you so often.
Yeah.
You're always up in there and you're there and you're watching the sun. My goodness, we got to get out of here
Yeah.
or get onto something solid before it gets dark.
Yeah. Well, because there's so much that gets lost in translation with the videos. Because, like, the night that I slept with my bear a couple of years ago, it's like the next morning, because it was almost dark on me, so I decided to just set up right there. And what you can't see is that country is just so brutal and steep. Like, if I couldn't see, and I'd never been in it before, so it's not like I knew it like the back of my hand.
Yep.
Like, there's literally no way out of it. And if you have a tumble in that stuff, especially by yourself, man, it could be a
Yeah.
really serious situation really quickly.
Yeah, new country there in the cliffs and that steep stuff you got to be able to see.
Yeah.
Is there a flashlight or a headlamp is not good enough. You have to be able to plan your route.
Yeah. So seeing
Yeah.
way ahead of you.
Yeah. You could keep yourself from falling off from a cliff with your headlamp there, but you would get yourself
Down into the
cornered up.
cliffs,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you couldn't, you'd just be stuck sitting there.
Because I've had a number of those nights in my life where you're trying to get out a new country with a headlamp and you get all the way down and then you get cliffed out and you can't see like what the alternative routes are or anything. You're just kind of prodding along and you just go up again and then come back down and try and get around these cliffs. And it is
Exhausting.
dangerous.
Yeah.
So here's a question, because you're a long haul truck driver for the most part. You do some local stuff,
Yep.
but even truck drive. How long have you been truck driving?
27 years.
27 years. So, I think it'd be awesome if you could share just a little bit about how you came to the Lord, because that's a pretty radical story. So it'd be awesome if you could share that story just a little bit with us,
Okay.
because it was around truck driving and hunting and
Yep.
all sorts of cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So that wasn't, it was a while ago, like 8 years ago now, 2013, 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Right about now. There, another truck driver in Texas gave me a CD of some random sermon, and I either took that just because I weren't going to say no, because I won't really back down for nothing.
You're not scared of anything.
Not necessarily.
He just respects it.
Yeah.
That's what we call it.
I listened to that then a few days later, and that hit me so hard, and I knew I was going to hell there, and I knew it was true. I'd tried to live my whole life up to that point, hoping that Christianity wasn't true.
Okay.
And there was no God.
Why did you hope that there was no God at that point before?
Because I knew that I wasn't right with him. If there was one, I was going to hell.
Okay.
My only hope at that time was that there wasn't one.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
That was where my hope was. And so I listened to that, and I knew there was one, and that I was not right with it. There, and so I was just upside down about that, and I could bully through most any difficulties in their hardship, and I figured I could bully right through dying, but I couldn't bully through eternity in hell. I could not face that. And that freaked me out so bad and scared me so bad that I had to call on the Jesus that I wanted to go with him.
So you were it's not really a joke, but we kind of joke about it, but you were on the 287.
Yep, Highway 287 there that runs catty corner across America.
Yeah.
And so I died on the 287.
Yeah, and I want to vouch for that. So here's the crazy thing about Shane is when he first became a Christian, you were such a recluse. Like it was all about your own personal time, and you worked as little as possible and saved as much money as possible so that you could have your time, your free time.
Yep.
And then like you talk about a radical change. I don't know if I would call you antisocial so much as just like really focused on living your own life. And I watched that transition where like we became friends, which you didn't really hunt with other people. And then all of a sudden we started hunting together, which was way out of probably both of our comfort zones a little bit. And then you're the one who ended up grabbing Adam and bringing him into Limitless Outdoors.
Yep.
And I've watched over the last many years is like your life has gone from one that, like if I was just to kind of sum it up, like one that was very lived for yourself and just trying to protect that for yourself to one that's super focused on other people, which is interesting. Like that's been a radical change. So like when we joke around about the old Shane Foutch dying, like that's Romans 6, right? When we died and we're baptized into Jesus's death and then we're raised in newness of life. Like there's an actual, so it's not just about the future in hell.
Yep.
Like at first that's what you're after. You're like, I don't want to go to hell.
Yeah.
Like I want to go with Jesus. But it's not even just that. Like when we give our life to Jesus, it doesn't just change our eternity, like future eternity. It's a quality of life that changes right now. And so you're raised in newness of life. And what's that like learning to live again? Because you and I talk about this all the time. Because if you're going to live a new life, like all of a sudden you're having to learn some new things to live in.
It was extremely difficult.
Okay.
I did not know how to live at all because they talk about being born again. So I was born again and I did not know anything because all the things that I knew before that I lived by were valueless.
Yeah.
Basically. I still have kept using the same skills and passions that I had before, but everything totally changed. There in the first year was really rough. Then I met you and got plugged into the church, and I learned a lot about how to live my new life.
Yeah. What is the? I remember you saying once, because we shared like your testimony with the church once. We made a video of it, and you said you understood what you'd been saved from, but you had a hard time understanding what you'd been saved to.
Yeah.
Like you knew you'd been saved from hell, but you were having a hard time understanding like, what are we saved to? Have you gotten any more insight on that, or is that still one of those things like you can't hardly wrap your mind around?
That's still something you can't hardly wrap your mind around, because I am so tied into this body and this life. I can't hardly grasp that I am ever going to have another one
Yeah.
that will be better than this one.
What do you think, Adam? What's your understanding of, like, what do you think when you think about heaven? What do you think about? Because like when I think about like heaven on earth, I think about the bear hunting that we're talking about. You know what I mean? Or just being up in those mountains. Like I think of that. So like when you think of heaven, what's no wrong or right answer. I'm just trying to kind of explore that a little bit. What do you think about when you think about heaven?
I think about being surrounded by your loved ones, and everybody else that walked with the Lord. And I think about no sufferings, no cares about any of this little piddly stuff that we care about. And it's like he said, it's hard to wrap your mind around that because we're so caught up in worldly things, and it's hard for even Christians to think past that sometimes. And so I don't know, I just think about that, just how crazy it'll be to not worry about paying your rent, paying, any of this stuff. Like being sick, being hurt, being tired. Like I don't know. It's just one of those things that's just hard to fully grasp what it's going to be like. And so
I like that though.
know.
Like it's kind of the good without the worst parts of life.
Yeah, exactly.
Because when we think about, because we're going to be in a new heaven, and there's a new heaven and a new earth. So there's new earth, and like when God made this earth, it was perfect, and then the sin messed everything up, right? And like if we're honest and humble and look at our own lives, like all of our problems come from either our sin or somebody else's sin.
Mm.
Like if it wasn't for that, it wouldn't be, like life would be incredible. And so once that is fully removed and dealt with, and we're in our resurrected new sinless bodies, like we're going to be on a new earth. And my understanding of it isn't so much that it's going to be like new, like there's going to be like Avatar world with floating islands in the sky and stuff. I mean, maybe it could be that way, but the idea of that newness is going to be like just a totally redeemed, perfect world. And so like what I'm looking forward to, and people might have different theology on this, I'm not so sure there's not going to be hunting when it comes to like, I'm just not so sure that it's not going to be that way. We'll find out. But even if hunting's not there, it's going to be incredible because we're going to be in a new world that's like unhindered by and untouched by all the junk. Like you're just not going to have the junk.
I think the best way to put it is you and Shane joke about, not really joke about, but you guys mention like this is going to be in like the top 10 days of your life. This is going to be in the top 5 days of your life. Like you may only have one day like this in your entire life. One of those perfect days, like
Oh, that's good.
with your moose, right? So I think about that moment, like when I got my elk, I completely broke down my Colorado bull this year. I was weeping.
That was like a mental breakdown.
Yeah, it was complete. It was a psychotic break. But it was that moment where it was like
the joy.
Yeah, that unhinged and unprecedented joy that you feel in that moment, and like the complete and overwhelming sense that you're in God's creation, right? Like you're just surrounded by it and you're in that moment. I think my best way to put it is that is going to be your every moment. That is going to be like who you are and how you exist. Because it's what? One day in your court is better than 10,000 elsewhere, right?
1,000, yeah.
Or a million elsewhere. It doesn't matter. One day is
it's
better.
just hyperbole.
Yeah. So when I think about that our top 10 days where you have that one day is going to be better than even those.
Yeah, because it's
Which
kind
is
of just like
crazy. It's mind blowing.
those moments, like, because I guess just bringing it full circle back to the bear hunting, like at the end of the day, it has very little to do with the bear itself.
Yeah.
Like,
Let's do it at the moment.
You're after that country, but you're not after even the country itself. You're after the way it makes you feel when you're in it. Because if it was about the bear, then every bear you saw from the road, you just plug it and throw it in the back of your truck. But it really has, it's interesting because as people, like we think, well, bear hunting is what makes me happy. Well, maybe it's actually not. Like, it's actually the location and where you are, and it's not even any of that. It's just how all of that stuff together makes you feel. So that's what you're really after.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when we talk about the spring bear hunting, our poor man's sheep hunt, we're hunting bear up in this nasty country. Like, really what we're after is that feeling that you get from being there, like Colton's describing, like heaven will be your
Top
just
10.
continual top 10 days in that sense. That's pretty rad. Any other thoughts on that?
That's all I got to say about that.
That's awesome. So then, I need to think for a second. So there's this joke that goes around because you could not put Shane in a mold. Like, there's only one Shane Foutch in this entire world. There's no doubt about it. And we all gave up trying to wrangle him and control him and get him to do things our way. But that's some of the beauty. So actually, one of the prayers I have over every one of you guys, just as your friend, is I ask the Lord to show me what he wants me to help change in you and what he loves about you guys, each of you. So yeah, my continual prayer is because there's things that God wants to like make better in our lives, obviously, but then there's the unique things. And so like when we look at Jesus with the disciples, you have zealots and tax collectors and like all this huge mix, and you got like all these different backgrounds and people, and he made some things better in them, but he loved some of the things that they were, right? And so one of my favorite things about you, Shane, is like you're just who you are, and you're very unapologetic about it. And that really brings a lot to the table. I know it's impacted a lot of our lives. And the thing I really respect about you is that you don't sell out to anything. Like, everything you do is practical, and everything that you do is because you love to do it. And I just wanted to, I think that's your integrity and who you are is a super big part of, I think, why people like you so much on YouTube. Like, we always see all these comments like, we want more Shane Foutch. And so I think that's just a huge part about it. And you'll notice it in the videos when you watch them that Shane's just totally unique, and he's totally unique in real life. And he's the same person on video that he is, maybe even a little bit better person in real life than on video, I would say. But yeah, I just wanted to say that about you. I think that's an incredible asset that you bring, and you've mentored all of us so much in so many different ways. I think that's the real strength of our team. Is I have literally learned something from every one of you guys when it comes to hunting the backcountry, and I think every one of us has learned. Like, we all kind of have different sets of gifting when it comes to that. We've all learned a ton from each other.
Yeah.
What would be one of so my big things that I learned from you, Shane, were tracking animal personalities. And I would also say I've learned a ton about respecting animals from you, because I was in a phase of my life when I met you that I was very blood hungry. They say that everybody kind of goes through those different phases in their hunting. Like, you just want to kill, and then you become a trophy hunter, and then you love the process of it. Right. And so those would be some of the big things that I've learned from you. What about you, Adam? What do you think you've learned from Shane over the years?
One specific thing I learned, and it actually helped me out the other day, was not letting the weather determine what you're going to do that day. So if you had a plan to do something, you wake up and it's raining, and you're like, oh, it's raining, I'm not going to go do it. Like, no, just go do what you're going to do regardless. I mean, put your rain gear on. That's what we have it for. And
it's a simple way of looking at it.
Well, and the other day I was going to go shed hunting, and I just, like 2 days up to when I was going to go, I just wanted to go, and I knew I needed to go and beat somebody to my spot. And I woke up that morning, it's just pouring rain. This is like 2 weeks ago. Pouring rain. And probably snowing in the mountains. I won't go. And I was already dressed to go, and I'm sitting there at the house, and I just thought, why would I not go? Just go. Even if I walk around all day and I don't find a single thing, at least I went and gave myself that chance. So I ended up going, and it was like the best day I've ever had. And so, yeah, that's one specific thing that I learned from Shane, that you can apply to anything in life. But
Shane always says when we're hunting, or we're hunting with a friend or something, and it just seems really hopeless, he's like, we just got to keep going because we got to give God a chance to do a miracle. Like when you give up, it's kind of taken away the opportunity for God to do a miracle.
Yeah.
That goes full circle all the way back to his story right in the beginning about his dad, walking around with his dad and having that. Giving God a chance to do a miracle. What about you, Colton? What have you learned from Shane?
After walking around this last spring bear hunting on that second bear trip we did, it was wandering around a little bit, like letting yourself move through the ground, work the ground, not your destination, but actually work through the ground and pay attention to what's going on around you. Because there are so many times that Shane's just noticing small things on the ground, like the tracks, like you mentioned, and like he found that. To me, the rifle shell in that little basin before he rounded out onto the face, the special tree. There's a little basin that had there's a rifle shell sitting there, and it's funny because we just found some bones, and we were talking about it and trying to figure it out. And we're like, there's no way somebody dropped in here to hunt this. And I would have completely missed the rifle shell. And Shane just looks down and sees it, and he's like, it all adds up. Like he puts together the pieces and
the story.
Yeah, the story.
He can tell the story of the land, like what's happened there over time. That's cool.
Yeah, he just wanders and pays attention to it more, and I think it slowed me down a bit and made me realize I need to look down a little bit more, maybe.
So here's my big takeaways from this conversation is that I think my biggest one is heaven is going to be like our top 10 days. That was my big one. But then just like that hunting is so much. And I think that any hunter that's hunted for a while starts to realize that like hunting is just so much more than just the hunt of the animal itself. It's all about that spot that we can get to and the way it makes us feel what you're really, I mean, whether you're Christian, you believe you have a soul or not, like I don't know. Everybody kind of knows they got a soul. Like if you just think about it for a second, because you're sitting up there on those hillsides and your heart aches and yearns for more of what you're experiencing there. And that was all created by God. And so when I look out across those mountains, and if my heart yearns, like if my heart aches and like that's where I want to be, and it was all created by God, what I really want more of is not the mountains, but I want more of God at the end of the day. And that's an interesting jump to make in your mind when you start to realize, like, when you're in love with all that God created, what you're really in love with is God, and you may not even realize it. And sometimes people think of God as this just crazy bully or somebody they got to get right with, otherwise he's going to send them to hell. But Romans 2:4 says that it's the goodness of God that leads us to repent, to change direction from where we've been going. Like we're headed towards hell, we're headed our own way. But it's the goodness of God. And I think when you're up in those mountains, we're talking about Spring Bear and the rocky, nasty mountains, like that is the creation of the good. Like that is a huge demonstration of the goodness of God for me. So that's my big takeaways for talking with the legendary bear hunter, Shane Foutch.
Okay.
Would that make any sense?
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. You got any last closing thoughts for us?
Well, since you were saying all that about me there, I learned from you. I learned the valuableness and the technique of glassing big country, and then in finding big glassable country, and then finding the unfindable in it with your binos.
Yeah.
I learned that, and then I got the basics of how to walk with Jesus.
At least I taught you one thing good.
The glassing.
You know, the problem with the glassing, though, that I have run into is I know you're farther along in this journey than me, but my eyes are starting to go a little bit.
So are mine.
Yeah. And that is a problem. And
It's
Adam's
not-
sitting here with his $50 pair of binos, and he's outglassing me now.
Not wrong.
Yeah, it is a fleeting knowledge that is not gonna take me really anywhere I want to go. And I would still, after I glass for a long time, I just want to walk over there and see what's over there anyway.
Well,
Look at the ground and see what's
that's the
been
funny
there.
thing. That's the funniest thing about this whole, like, that's what's cool about the whole team and all of our different approaches to hunting is that not one technique works all that great, because there's the hunt that you ended up killing that probably really realistically about our biggest bull we ever killed up there. I mean, Adam's, I guess, is the widest. But when you and I were hunting out there and we were in that miserable situation, we've been glassing down in that country forever and never saw a moose. And then we're just waddling along on this ridge, and my gosh, there's a moose right in front of us. Like
Yeah.
50 yards.
Yeah.
This huge moose that you'd think you couldn't hardly miss from anywhere. Had been there he'd been rubbing all those trees the whole time. We never saw him,
Yeah.
and just stumbled right into him, wandering around like a raccoon.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, I'm going to wrap this podcast up, but I just want to encourage you. I don't know if anything really stood out to you as you were listening, especially about heaven being kind of one of those top 10 days, or Shane's testimony, and just understanding that God is real, or maybe even you're in one of those people that's just hoping God's not real. We want to, if you're interested in knowing more about God so you know that you're on the right side of him, we have a resource that we wrote called The First Mile, and it'll teach you everything that you need to know about who God is, how to have a relationship with him, why you need a relationship with him, and then just really how to have an actual practical relationship, kind of those first steps of getting going with Jesus. We want to send that to you absolutely free. You can go over to our website. It's www.limitlesshunting.com and request one there. We want to see you grow and understand God and understand everything God's got for you. It is a lifelong process, and it is hard to even comprehend how incredible life can be with God and what he has for us in the future. But we want to help you kind of take some steps that direction so you can be living that life that God has for you. So until next time, my friends, remember, it doesn't matter what you've done. It only matters what you do now. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.